like I said, this material was built for, it can be used in a college or a high school. So we're just going to kind of keep running until we run out of time or run out of questions, whichever comes first. So lesson 2 is we're going to actually add a label and the layout constraints to the collage, to the Word Collage app. All of these Xcode projects are out there on GitHub. Actually, the whole thing is just a single zip file that you can download. I just remembered that. So you don't even have to get it off of GitHub. You can just download it from that one location. So let's bring up that next lesson.
Now this is all Swift, the older one, right? 1.0? It doesn't talk about 2.0 and stuff?
Yes. This is all 1.0 to 1.2. 1.2,
okay.
Now the thing about this is that he welcomes updates. So if you see things that could be updated, then you're welcome to add them. All right, so this time we're going to add a new label and layout constraints to the collage. Hopefully I don't make a total fool out of myself messing with the auto layout, but we're definitely going to have fun with it. So we're going to recognize how adaptive layouts affect the appearance of an app running on different hardware and in different device orientations. With the introduction of the bigger iPhone, and Apple kind of projected that there were going to be different screen sizes because they came out with this auto layout technology. And it allows you to create an interface using auto layout constraints, and it automatically resizes and changes your UI according to the device that it's going to be run on. If you do it, well inside of using the auto layout engine or components. So we're going to practice adding and customizing a user interface component. Discover how to add constraints to interface components, experiment with size classes and auto layout constraints to customize the appearance of user interface. And we're going to test the runtime appearance of a user interface with interface builder previews and the iOS simulator. So this is the vocabulary that we'll be using and that you want to familiarize yourself with, especially constraints. I showed you the document outline there, the constraints, auto layout, size class, the canvas, storyboard, orientation, the attributes inspector. Of course, it's all done inside of interface builder. Okay, so if this were a class and I knew that everybody had their computers on them, I would say follow along. Let's close this flashlight project and we will open Collage Lesson 2. Xcode projects. Now I think about it, I bet you that's the finished Lesson 2 project. Okay, that looks finished. So we want to get Lesson 1, and our Lesson 2 should look like that when we're done. First I'm going to do is open up the main storyboard. Oh, I could have just used Command 1. Let's try that. Command 1. to select main story, but I'd already done it. Okay, we'll run the app. And it will observe the visual layout of the collage and how it appears different in the iOS simulator. So we're supposed to see that this looks different than what we had laid out here inside of the actual storyboard. So it crushed in a lot of the words, ran out of space, and it just brought everything in that way and totally changed our layout. Let's see if there are any constraints on here. Yes, there are some constraints. Okay, let's modify them. So these are, like I said, I'm trying not to make assumptions here. So these are all of your labels, each one of these, and you'll see how, like for instance, help people. There's help people that are highlighted right there in the middle. If you want to move, like this panel over here, what's called the utility panel, out of the way, you can select up here to change the visibility of whatever parts of Xcode that you want to be visible or not, including that bottom debug area. So I'll move the attributes out of the way for now. All of these are your labels inside of the view. Each of these labels are those words are each of these labels. And then these are your constraints. So I thought we were going to add constraints, but let's see. All right, so this is called an adaptive user interface. If we were to take this view controller as created here and run it on I believe we're running on an iPhone 6. I chose iPhone 6 here as the iOS device that we're running on. Then this is what it will look like on an iPhone 6. Now if I decided to choose another device, if I ran it on let's say iPhone 5S, which is going to be smaller. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so there's your, and it automatically scaled it at a certain level here. So we'll make the whole thing fit on the screen.
Can you rotate it, James? Okay.
That's a very good point.
There's a lot of things happening there.
So when you rotate the device, that this is what's happening. If you were to turn that phone sideways to landscape versus portrait. Okay, so we're going to place a new label on here. We're going to need our utility pane again. And I'm going to do the verbose listing here. These are all the objects that we have to choose from. It's pre-made. And here it is label. So we can drag, if you just select it, you see that hint that comes up about labels. So I'm going to drag a label onto our view here. And let's set it right there. And let's make it say, what is all this saying? Music, travel fans, get in shape, go camping. I'm going to add eat ice cream.
Come on, not iOS.
What is it? Eat ice cream. And it looks like they pretty, so we created a label. Oh, it said learn to code. Let's go ahead and learn to code. Okay. Learn to code. And we're going to use the Attributes Inspector to change the font family, size, and color to 51 point Avenir Next Ultra Light. Wow. So right over here, let's see, I'm going to use a custom in the family. See if I have Avenir on my computer. I do. Avenir Next Ultra Light. Okay, the style is ultra light, and it its size and adjust the label position, and then run the app. I want a different color. Let's use one of these reds that I used before. All right, there we go. So I have a habit of saving. It would have saved if you just run it. So I'm going to do Command R to run. I think we're still set to the iPhone 5. And as you see, it gets chopped right off. If we rotate it though, it does show up. Learn to code. So in order for us to put this, in order for this, let's have this learn to code stay in the place that we want it to stay, we're going to have to add constraints. If we don't add constraints, then it will make a best guess. And correct me if I'm wrong. It'll make a best guess on how to place the object that you place there. So let's add the constraints here. We're going to use the pen control to select the vertical space constraint relative to the view. So it sounds like there's some things I should have talked about in lesson 1 that I didn't talk about. So this is the label, which is learn to code is right here. Learn to code is right here. This label is a sub-view to this view. So this view is actually a UI view object. So we are going to put a constraint on this learn to code label with respect to its containing view. And that constraint will, I don't know if the best metaphor to think of it is hold it in place or lock it down or anchor it. But that's what the constraint is going to do after we add this constraint. With the label selected, use the pen controls to select the vertical space constraints. These right down here are your like constraint controls. And this one is your vertical space. No, that's a pen control, sorry. All right, so distance, use label selected, use pen controls to select the vertical space constraint relative to the view. So it doesn't say which one we need to select. So I'm going to say, if we were to turn these on, we would be saying set the width, freeze the width to 342 pixels. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, especially if you see me going off on a tangent that's not right. So it just took that current value of 342 pixels, and we can set the constraint for the height to 78 pixels, which is roughly what it is.
Say like which kind of constraints you're supposed to put on it?
It says like
342 is going to be wider than the iPhone 5S can show.
Okay.
I think it's looking for a vertical space, the vertical space constraint. So whatever that option is at the very top.
Okay.
James, maybe an easier one would be the thing to the left of the little TIE fighter down there. You can set the one to the left of it. You can set constraints to horizontally and vertically centered.
Okay.
So maybe that's a way of kind of showing that would keep it centered no matter which device it is, which rotation it is.
Right, but I'm trying to understand, like if you see, they're all squishing and expanding as things go, and they're not actually centered. So would it make sense if we just select, say, one of them, say create an app, and see what constraints are associated with the understand what
Look at
they
the
said.
constraints for that, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe
Yes, that's a great idea.
it's like they just dropped you off, like, go figure it out yourself.
Mhm.
It looks like they all have vertical or a center X alignment, and then they have spacing relative to each other.
Is it what it is?
Some of them
I know
have,
some of them do, yeah.
some of them have an X alignment on their edge. as
Right, I
opposed to
see.
center.
I see a lot of X alignment, vertical space. Is the vertical space relative to another item above it, below it, or is it relative to the whole view?
It looks like the whole view.
That's what it says, right? How do you see?
So if you click on it and click the ruler
Okay.
on the right pane, on the utility pane, the ruler icon of the
Sizes.
size and
Okay,
space.
that's how you see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
scroll down a little bit, you can see all the constraints for that particular
okay.
item.
The cool thing is if you edit them there, you'll see the, like it'll update the view for you without breaking anything, but if you update on like if you try to drag the thing around,
Right,
it's
right.
gonna break the machine.
Right, okay. So that one says top space to subview.
Yeah, to the super view. Top space to super view is
okay.
357, so it'll always be 357 from this top.
Then how does it move up? So if you go to the runtime, go to the emulator, and if you swing it, it moves up. Create an app. See, that's not same constant. Create an app with reference to the top of the view. Travel to France. It moves up and down, right?
Did that move up?
Yeah. See, it moves down.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So are you sure there's no code behind this?
So if we do the, let's see if we can do that little preview here. What was that, Chris?
I was trying to see if the constraint was set to,
Click on it, the view.
so it's set to the top of the view. Is it a constraint that's equal to that, or is it greater than or less than?
Equal.
Oh, it's equal?
Yeah, equals 357 to the super view.
Can you double click on it or click on that constraint?
With the
If it's
priority.
constant, so if you run it on an iPad, James,
Mhm.
it should be like all the way to the top, right? Everything is pushed up to the top. It's not, right? I mean, you saw it was like everything was trying to fill up the whole screen. So I was looking for, like what Chris said, have a vertically aligned or centered type of thing. And there doesn't seem to be one there.
Well, at least for that one label. No.
You see how it fills up?
Yes. Scale this here. Okay. So everything moved up. Is that 300?
Probably, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think even on the small iPhone screen with the landscape width, it's still 350.
It's constant, so I'm just imagining, I'm sorry. You know, it's,
Yeah, if you look at it on like an iPhone 5 maybe,
Okay.
where it says
okay, so
320.
this UI is not that complex, it's just all constants with reference to top, left, and right.
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
It's magic.
No, but no, if you look at it, in the design view, right, say for example, help people is actually overlapping in height with formula, right? But when you actually run it in a higher screen, it actually fits in between the two gaps. So they are all relatively moving at a different rate, and I think it has to do with the constants with the top of, with respect to the top of the screen.
Yeah, I think as far as left-right alignment, they definitely can move because their alignment is relative to the center.
Right.
Actually, some of them have, if you click like music again, some of them have the left-right alignment on the edge of the label as opposed to the center. So you saw how like when it was rotating, it cut off that create an app. When it's in portrait, it was cutting off create an app, and then when it was landscape, you could see the whole thing.
Right.
It kind of seems like that when this app was created, it was just kind of random alignments were placed on there. It's not like.
But what an app to get started. This is like, it's gonna throw people off.
I guess the question is typical if you're gonna have an app that has to do something?
I guess what would be a good test is if you delete all the constraints and just hit reset. Just hit like use suggested constraints and just see if it suggests the same constraints based on just
You have
position.
the original zip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure
So
back up.
are these measurements in pixels or some kind of like I know with Android they do like SP and dp depending on the pixel density of the screen they're using.
They call it points.
Points?
Yeah. Up until the iPhone 6 Plus, it was like a 1x, 2x, like you could just double it for Retina devices.
Okay.
But now I think the 6 Plus is like actually a different scale. It's like 33% or something.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so it's wrong to say vertical space of 270 pixels is 270 points.
Yeah.
It's 270 points just because the device scales it to its pixels.
It's like trying to keep
It's
up
fraction
with
of a pixel.
Okay, it's fraction of a pixel.
Trying to go the Android route, device independent pixels.
I
It's
see.
an Android, it's dipped. You know, finally after like.
I was gonna say,
you know,
you snuck that in there. No, yeah, no, you're right, you're right. It's, how they're gonna get the different sizes, but that's how we got the different sizes. Okay. Now, I do wanna see, what did they want us to show? I do think it's odd that you start out the lesson with auto layout.
I mean, whatever happens to the hello world, right? I mean, there is no hello world.
This.
That's how you weed out,
people out.
That's
That's what I was gonna say, yeah.
It must be a college course.
See who's dedicated.
Right.
But isn't all of this going away in Swift 2, right? I mean, Swift 2, we're not going to use, I mean, auto layouts are there, but it's much better handled.
Well, in iOS 9, they have something called Stack View. That you're
Right.
supposed to start using Stack View. This would be a nightmare in Stack View.
In
If you're
Stack
gonna
View.
build this.
That's true.
But is it common that somebody's gonna build an app that displays information like
Yeah,
this?
it's like, those graphical interfaces, what is important? Like if you have like, those, forget the word, doing data analysis, right? Like, and you want to pop up what is important and, when you do code analysis, what's the biggest error? And all these bigger ones pop
Yeah.
up and then other
It's like a
ones go
word
down.
cloud.
Yeah.
word
Yeah,
cloud.
word cloud, that's
Word
exactly what I
cloud.
was looking for,
Yeah.
yeah. This is like if you write a code to generate this, friends are important obviously, and then what's the next important thing? Fall in love. Obviously the one that's not important is win the game, right? So, by the intensity or whatever.
Cool. Since some of y'all are more artistic than I am, I saw nothing in that.
It's like a bucket list, but that's what I thought.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's probably kind of, and then learn to code is the biggest, and that's why we're here, and that's probably why this is kind of cool.
It's a Rorschach test.
I know, it's a Rorschach test.
It's more useful than the flashlight was.
Flashlight's pretty useful in Java.
That flashlight was like my first mistake iOS app, so I had known it wasn't a mistake. I could probably okay, so let's see if we can do something. Now, I have gotten in quicksand with auto layout before, so I may or may not get this working. With y'all's help, obviously we'll get this working, but if we take too long, I think I will just skip it.
Yep.
Like how we do in production. No.
I would say just use the automatic constraints feature.
So delete all the constraints and just allow it to place
Yeah,
it?
just even on the one you selected, you could just select it and go down and select the, on the bottom, what is the triangle icon out the bottom? You can actually choose reset to suggested constraints.
Okay.
And that'll
You
just
could also
throw in some constraints it's just based on the position and the size. It'll just say
So it
fixed
centered
to
it
that.
on the X.
Yeah, James, if you wanted to, if you're trying to set a vertical constraint to the super view, another way you could do that is if you right-click and drag, kind of like you can do when you're creating actions and outlets. You can right-click, or I guess if you're on your laptop, you can control-click, I think, and drag to any other view, especially the super view. So if you just, like right there is the super view. And when you let go, it's going to pop up a list of auto layout suggestions. So in this case, if you did leading spaces on the left, trailing spaces on the right. Top space is probably what the tutorial was asking you to do.
Alright.
And that's going to set a constraint to the super view
Okay.
top space.
It's like a clue there.
Top space to the layout guide. So, okay, there it is.
So it looks like that's what the other ones are doing.
197. And because they're all blue, that means all the constraints resolve and we're good. If they were orange, what we see is not necessarily what the constraints are doing. And then if it was red, we would have a little red warning up here. So let's try running this when it doesn't have enough information or constraints aren't inflicted. So there we go. Learn to code is 197 or something like that, points from the top. And let's see if we shift this. And the automatic constraints that Jonathan brought up, I believe, is centering it in the view. So I believe that's still centered. Yeah, and it's still 197 from the top. So we just made it out of our first constraints, our first auto layout lesson. That really deserves a pat on the back. So we're supposed to discuss how interface code displays the vertical blue bars, showing the constraints are valid, or that they're good. And those are the blue bars, horizontal or vertical, according to how the constraint is set. And let's create an issue real quick.
You know how all the constraints are all bunched up in that node in the tree?
Yes.
Is there a way to like adjust it so that all the constraints go stick to the actual label that are tied to it? Is there a way to customize that in Xcode? No.
I think the thing is that the constraints itself are combined between the view, the parent, and the
Because
labels.
sometimes I'll see the constraints like the width constraint.
Yeah, so you'll see height and width because those
Yes.
don't rely on.
See, like on the learn to code, there's like an arrow next to it.
Yes, can you open that one, Jake?
That's because it has a width constraint
Oh,
and
you
a
did
height
that.
constraint
Ah,
on the
okay.
actual label. And so the constraints, that little,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
constraints section is actually
Right.
the parent views constraining its subviews.
Right.
It's not really the subviews being constrained to the parent. It's the parent telling all the subviews how to
I wish
constrain.
they had them all bunched up. I know it's with the relative to it, but just tag it with one or the other ways because really, I mean, Apple, this is like the most unuser-friendly way of looking at anything. Right?
This is where you'd use the size inspector. That's
On the
usually,
side,
like if
right.
you're trying to find the constraints for a particular view, you would use
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Although the other ones that's related to will sometimes show in there too. So this is
Yeah, and what I do is I open up all of it. Like my tree is like so tall, and I try to go find that one thing because they're all lines here. When you look on the right side, vertical lines, horizontal lines. And it's just difficult to track, especially when you want to hunt down those triangles. It says, you know, you got a problem with the storyboard.
Yes.
one more month. We need to stack view.
So with stock view, do those go away or?
Well, this particular example you can't really do with stack view.
No,
but
I
stack view
will
will
still use
cover-
stack view on this. I will break it, but I will not deal with these lines. It just does not make sense, right?
Stack view covers about 90% of any auto layout stuff you have to write right now.
Wow.
Like if you just wanted to do a table view cell that has an image and then 2 lines of text next to it, that's 2 stack views. A vertical one with 2 labels on top of each other, put inside a horizontal stack view, which is an image of the other one.
I see.
Very similar to Android linear layouts.
Cool. All right. So let's just create a quick little issue here. I'm good at creating issues.
You got the triangles.
We got the
Nice.
triangles now. Because our constraints are no longer, the frames no longer line up with what the constraint is saying. This is called a misplaced view. It expected X to be at 122, Y 217, but the actual is 110 and 218. So you see that it's highlighted in orange and gives you a highlight to where what the constraints say that the frame should, where that label should be. So that's when you hit Command Z.
Oh, no. I thought you have like another shortcut to do it.
No.
I know, that's what I'm supposed to do.
No, if you clicked on the triangle, it would tell you how to fix it. It would let
No,
you
but
fix
I
it.
thought you guys had like a shortcut. If I have like 10 triangles,
Click that,
right?
yeah.
You see how you have that one
Update
triangle there?
constraints.
Okay.
Just move a few stuff around it. So
Yeah.
what is the easiest way to fix it? I guess that's what I'm trying to
Well,
find
just
out.
what Jonathan just said, I mean, update frame.
No, actually update constraints. Update frame will put it back
Oh,
to
it'll
where
put
it
it back,
was.
it'll put it
The
back.
constraints will actually adjust itself based on where you positioned it.
Will that update on all of them, or do you have to do that for each error that's on there?
You would do it for each error.
So there's not like a script that does it for everything?
Actually, you can, if you go down to the triangle TIE fighter,
That's why you-
there's one that updates all of them for you.
Could that be
Yeah.
its official name, please?
I like the TIE Fighter.
Yeah.
Hey James, can we go off script and do something
Sure,
crazy
yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Because this view looks like it'd be really awesome if you tried this. This is another debugging feature that I've never actually used for any good reason. I just do it because it looks cool. If you'll run the app, or actually the app's running right now, isn't it?
Yes.
So down there in the debug panel, there's the pause button, the breakpoint button, the location button, and then just to the left of the location button, there's those little views or the little boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Will you, to the left of it?
Oh, yeah.
Will you tap that? So this is called debug view hierarchy, which doesn't look that impressive right now. I'm not sure if it should actually. There we are. So here's the cool thing. Yeah, so this lets you debug it. It's almost like inspecting inside your browser if you're inspecting your web stuff. But really cool thing here is, I think I gotta remember what the shortcut is.
So you tap on it and then I think move it.
Yeah, tap and then drag.
Oh,
It's kind of like the Firefox web.
Yeah, and then you can zoom in on that. So this one's
Yeah.
not as impressive as I thought.
So if you're like layering multiple views on
Yeah.
top of each other,
So you guys
Try
should
the,
peek behind.
yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's really neat.
and this is really cool too because one of our guys was trying to do, he was researching security. This was a year or two ago. He was using an app that did a similar thing to this on a jailbroken phone, which lets you do this to other people's apps. And so he opened up, I think it was mint.com. I think 1Password had this problem too, where whenever you try to go into those apps, the first thing you see is like a security screen that tells you to log in. You would open it up and spin it around, you'd see all the data behind the login screen. You just turn it off.
Oh, wow. Now this is based on how they were added, right? Obviously, Go camping is the last one.
Yeah, I guess what
is
the
the
highest
index?
index?
Yeah.
Index, okay.
Z index, yeah.
Z index, okay.
So are the layouts saved in like XML or something like they are in Android? Okay.
But they're not really editable.
So the XML is not editable like it is.
Since Xcode 5 or 6, they've made it a lot better. To where like if you're merging two storyboards, you have a conflict. It's a little easier to see what's happening now, but yeah, it's not some deep code.
So you're meant to use their like tool to mess with it.
Yes. All right, so we just had an intro to the View debugger. That's always cool to look at. Okay. Let's go back to storyboard here. And I think we had done just about everything that we need to for the labels. Okay, now I'm going to need audience help on this one. For the various size classes, I had, okay, before we get to the size classes, I had already showed you the document outline. So let me get rid of this debug window here. And this document outline, visible or invisible. So this list here is your document outline. Now the size classes, down here, you have width any, height any. Can y'all see that? Okay. Let me click on it. Well, it didn't help. So you have, right down here, W and H, width any and height any. These are it says the base values for all layouts. So different size classes apply to different devices and orientations. So you can choose your size class. As you see, every time I hover over one of these areas, you have the top left is compact width, compact height, then you have compact width, any height, etc. Any width, compact height, any width, any height, regular width, compact height. So you have all these bases for size classes. Can you give an explanation on size classes?
So a size class is, think about a year or two ago, if you were trying to, let's just say you were building a login screen for an iPhone app. You would probably have like a nice cool picture to walk through, and then it would say login. There's 2 text fields, email, password, and then like a button at the bottom says login. Now if the user rotated their phone, now you can't really do that unless you put it like in a scroll view. So you wouldn't have had a way of, like what you really want in that situation, I guess, is probably to move the text fields to the left and then the buttons to the right of it so you don't have to actually scroll. That wasn't really possible until, I guess it was a year or 2 ago, because you would have, or yeah, just a year ago, because you would have had to do like some stuff in code that load a different view whenever that loads, if it's in landscape instead of portrait. But with size classes, you can say, you have one storyboard for everything. You can say, well, if it's and I can't remember which size class it is, but rotated phone, I think it tells you in the description, I think is compact height, regular width. I think, let's see, it says any width, compact height. For all compact, example is iPhone in landscape, so that's perfect. So you would tap on that, or click on that, and you can change the layout, move things completely around, and I think even like show and hide different elements, and it would only take effect in that size class. So only on iPhones in landscape, or perhaps another, maybe an iPad comes out that's like widescreen or something like that, then it would work there as well. So this is, they're not actually saying only do this on iPhones in landscape, only do this on iPads. They're saying size classes, that way they can come out with new devices in the future and your app will still work. Or this year they announced multitasking, which is you can have 2 apps side by side on an iPad, and by using size classes, even though it's an iPad, one app can be shown in the iPad size class and the other can be shown in iPhone size class because they're both sharing the same screen. Yeah. So size class is just a different, it gives examples for each size class of how it might be used, but with multitasking on the iPad now, really your app could be shown on an iPad in any size class.
Do you use it in production, Chris?
We have not had the good fortune of being able to in a lot of our applications.
The reason I asked is I try to use it in my production apps. It is a hit or miss because when you're talking in like 20 pixels, 10 pixels, and I wanted my app to look enough space, like spacey, when it comes to an iPad. Like buttons have enough room, you know, and then when it comes to an iPhone, squish them as much as you can without, you know, breaking any Apple's rules. I couldn't do that with size classes because technically what they're saying is you could select whichever grid you select and then you move stuff around. It's the same storyboard, but you have different versions of it for each one, right? Is that the understanding?
That is, yeah, that's the case.
Right? It worked to a certain extent, but I couldn't control it to that level that I needed, so I ended up writing code for it. So if it's, I found out what the screen width in the code, make it wider, make it smaller, and it looked better, like especially with the 6 and 6 Plus, it is so confusing because 6 Plus is almost like an iPad. And I wanted, and I did, it just did not, like, you know.
I had the same issue up until probably last week where I was trying to space buttons, you know, equally spaced across a width.
Right.
But if I move it to landscape, I want it still spaced equally.
Maybe
and what I found was the solution is in the constraints you can set like a multiplier. And that actually multiplier is basically like a fraction.
Right.
And that fraction you can set as like 3/4, 2/4, whatever. And that'll basically divide the width into sections. And you can
Okay.
basically keep it spaced relative to your container width. And so what I actually was doing, I was doing it very simple to say, okay, I'm designing for 320 pixels width, right? The normal iPhone base size. But if I go to an iPhone 6 Plus and it's a little bit wider, I still use those same fractions to say it's maybe offset is 50 pixels over 320.
Right.
But that fraction is still going to be relative to whatever the what's
So
400
your fraction is
pixels.
dependent on screen size. Is that right?
It's dependent on the screen size I'm designing at.
Okay.
So the fraction is still relative to the width of the screen.
Right. So if
But-
I ran it on an iPad, your fraction would automatically get a higher
It just
value.
scales.
Exactly. It would just
Okay.
scale based on that
That works.
fraction.
That works. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's why I can't get my head around this size class, because if you like writing code for it, you're most likely to go the fraction route, or
Yeah.
the way I did it. This is probably useful for people who don't want to do code, less code, do it all in a drawing board.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm all about
I mean,
writing
to find
less
somebody
code.
who's
That's
size class
my,
is awesome.
and that's my key. And what really disturbing is a lot of the Apple sample projects, they encourage you to write code to handle certain layout
Right. It's like
problems.
drink your own Kool-Aid. and
Yeah,
then tell us,
exactly.
right, you know?
I think
So yeah.
the best examples are the iPhone 6 Plus, where you'll have a lot of Apple's native apps. They'll rotate it into landscape, and a pane will appear that wasn't there before, or like it'll be
Yeah.
like a split view. And so I think those are the best examples. I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't even think if you're developing just for the iPad, for example, there isn't that. There's only one size class for the iPad, so normally you rotate it in whatever direction, But so I think I don't know if there's probably some examples out there with the 6 Plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I haven't had to.
So you can have multiple size classes, so you can control, like, if you're on an iPhone, portrait landscape, or if you're on an iPad, portrait landscape, you can have different size classes based on how you want to display them.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way Apple was suggesting is basically start with the any size class and do as many constraints as you can there to support all the any. And then when you want to fine tune for certain specific like landscape or whatever layouts, you select that layout and then you can go into the same section on the right to actually add or delete constraints based on that, what you had selected.
So if you're looking at the project structure and everything, you'd have multiple classes where you can
Yeah,
fine tune and everything?
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
If it makes you guys feel any better, it's the same problem in Android. They have the same thing. They don't call it size classes. They call it 700 Ws. Basically, any device that's over 700 devices per pixel do something versus they have it in different folders. Same concept, same headache. Code
It
works
made it
better.
easier recently, but yeah.
Yeah.
For Android first one,
Yeah, I mean, one finds it, the other one follows. You know, it's
Yeah.
just a matter of who gets it first. The year after you get it.
Same problem as Android. It's not making me feel better.
So is there a way to lock
Come on,
screen
you know,
rotation?
it's-
That's not the direction we're supposed to be heading.
You can do it on Apple.
Yeah, your app doesn't have to support all the screen orientations, but the user can also lock it as well.
Okay, so we hit size classes, we hit interface builder, constraints, and we rotated the app. Did we rotate that? Yes, we did. No, we didn't. Oh, I've already messed it up.
That's because it's still debugging. You have to stop it and start it again. Or
Yeah, you have to
hit the
hit the continue.
All right, let's see here. Oh yeah, okay, so we did that. And run the app similar to those. Okay. Visible screens of different iOS devices. How many different kinds of screens are there? And principle of adaptive layout. So all this is adaptive layouts. So, okay, well that's it. Now it is, we're about an hour and a half into this, and I don't have to start, let's 2 lessons. If I start another one, then we'll probably go over. This might be a better opportunity to have any questions, or I can do another presentation if there are no questions. And that's on model view controller, if anybody wants to cover model view controller. Any questions or any, yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned wanting to go through this curriculum. How do you want that? I think you were asking for volunteers. Do you want this to be still every month? Is it every 2 weeks? How do you see this working?
Well, I mean, I tell you what my optimum is. Realistically, with the kind of schedule that I have, it's a month, so that's realistic. But optimal would literally be if we could break out at least every 2 weeks in some kind of way. I wouldn't expect that Verizon would be available every 2 weeks, but somehow we get together, collaborate. I don't know, maybe it's Periscope or something, I'm not sure. But I think in person with laptops and plenty of electrical outlets more frequently than once a month. That'd be
Something like
great.
that.
Does everyone here, I mean, I live right down the street and I love the fact that this is in Irving. Would anyone be opposed to traveling a little bit, like maybe Dallas, or maybe not as far as Addison, but are there any other locations that, if we wanted to do that more often, if Verizon didn't want to come in every day?
Absolutely. I mean, I would, but I'm traveling, so I definitely would.
Where are you talking to this?
Well, I'm sure we could use our offices in downtown Dallas.
Okay.
So that might be the was it?
I'm moving downtown, so
Oh,
great.
awesome.
I don't know, so
Okay.
Cool. So,
We can always do like a Skype or something in addition to that, so if people want to be remote, they can be remote, and then people that want to be live can be live. It's gonna be both and.
that'd be cool. And if we knew your handle, I mean, we could do periscoping. You're periscoping this right now.
Yeah.
People are watching.
Just one.
Just one.
I'm gonna save the video for later.
But,
we can do like Skype or Google Hangouts, so you can share your screen.
Yeah.
And record that.
So I was thinking like a Google Hangout or something.
okay, Google Hangout.
Yeah,
Public, so.
Yeah.
And you can make that Hangout public.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you can probably record it and just upload it to.
You can hang out and put it on air.
Yeah.
So, what would you be, so,
I was just curious.
okay. So
What,
if,
what does everyone else think? Is 2 weeks a good amount of time? Is it a month?
I like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
You know, maybe meet here monthly, since we're already doing that, then every 2 weeks at other events or wherever.
Yeah.
Wherever.
Still recording?
Wherever.
You're on the record.
and I would encourage, you know, in addition to that, I would always encourage if there's, it just, you know, when you get stuck on something, it's so helpful just to, well, you probably already do that, you know, call somebody, but if the people in the group were available to get together to, you know, overcome obstacles, that's cool too. So if you're thinking about posting something like in between monthlies, so that would make that monthly, or even if it, you know, you only committed to once or twice, I think that would be better than you know, only having monthly.
We could always do, I mean, I think we're a little too big for the Madeline now, but
Right.
There's always that hotel and stuff too. So
Yes,
we've got some options still in everything.
definitely, definitely. And I've been asked to check out by several people some other places that I just haven't gotten around to yet, like improving enterprises. So, of course, open to that. So I think, you know, I think we could do that.
So what about maybe who would be interested in presenting one of these topics?
Good, Ramesh. All right.
I haven't looked at the contents yet, I just volunteered, so I'm trying to find out which one.
Hey, that's perfect. I mean, that's the beauty of it all being out here. And now that I know that the gentleman works at SMU, let's see if I can visit him. Maybe we have a guest speaker too. I totally recommend, I mean, as you see, I trip over a lot of stuff. Somehow, I'm asked to make an app, I make it. And I don't worry about that I knew that this was size class, that I knew this, that I knew that. But as you see, it doesn't take perfection to share what you do know with everybody. So I would definitely encourage anybody who feels like that you grasp one of these lessons to volunteer to share it, because that helps solidify it. I think I've said that like 5 times now, so I'm trying not to say it again. So do you want to just kind of organize that over the meetup website, just and as we work that out? Does anybody think that they'd be interested in attending such a thing if it were every 2 weeks, or if this became, we'd still do this monthly, would you go to the in between 2 weeks? You might be interested in attending some? Good. All right, great. See if there was something else. All right, it'll come to me. So, any other questions or?
How long is this course, James? Sorry, I was late. How many lessons are there?
That's a very good question. So let me just show you the whole breakout. I didn't want to turn this into a train the trainer type scenario.
Well, that's what I was going for.
Oh, good. Then I wanted to turn this into a train the trainer scenario. But as you see, each one, so Collage had 4 lessons. Space Adventure is the next app for level 1. And it has 15 lessons. And that's just on level 1. So there's level 1, level 2, and level 3. So what was his
I
last
think
time?
at the top level document, he said it was either 13 weeks or 17 weeks. Supposed to be the school semester or whatever that is. That's
Perfect.
Designed for.
That's it.
We got to 2 today.
Yeah, we have to 2 today. Yes.
So, is this in a zip file that you download?
Yes. So
Because I'm trying to find it in the website. So this is swifteducation.github.io, right?
yes.
In there, I can only see 3 levels. Is it just me or?
Well, it's only 3 levels, but remember, this is broken out by applications.
Oh, okay.
So level 1, level 2, and that threw me off at the beginning. It took me a little while to figure this out. So here you have, under level 2, you have a clock app, you have a stopwatch app, and then unit converter app.
Okay.
So notice how unit converter app has 11 lessons, stopwatch has 7, and clock has 6. I mean, so that's a ton of lessons.
Got it.
And the cool thing is the Xcode projects for each of these lessons are here. So there's your unit converter lesson 1, unit converter lesson 2. So if anybody misses a meetup or a meeting, you have the finished product of what that curriculum talked about, what that lesson talked about, available to you. And if you just wanted to just dig in there and see how they did certain code, certain things, all these apps are available.
So who are these guys? swifteducation.github.io. Who is?
Apple's financing it. It was produced by a guy that's a professor at SMU.
Okay.
Actually, Chris taught me that. I actually thought it was Apple, and I might have even put that on the meetup invitation.
I think if you go to the iTunes U site for this, there's more information, the guy's photo, and all that.
Oh, nice. And so that's a very good point that you bring up. This whole layout and setup is available in iTunes U.
Okay.
So you could download the whole thing to your iTunes U if you didn't want to work.
So this will be good. I'll learn, then I'll come and talk about it the next day.
Sure.
I mean, it's going to stick with me, right? I mean, if I act like I know, then I better know it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's something I've wanted to play with for a while. The iTunes U app, I think it actually lets you, almost like a little community, lets you share notes and post questions and stuff. So I don't know if there's a way like fork it, but that might be pretty cool.
Yes.
It's like GitHub, fork it there.
Fork the, so you can sort of like post it as another iTunes U course or something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see. So okay.
My goal is to adapt this for middle schoolers. There's this class of 5th and 6th graders in my church, so I'm getting 46 of them together in a cohort. We're going to go through, probably start with Scratch, which is like an MIT language to teach kids programming, and then look into January, start doing some design and Sketch, and then get into Swift.
Nice.
So it's kind of fun if it starts with auto layout. My kid's eyes would glaze over if they started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back to scratch.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, Scratch would be a good. And I know somebody who has started a kids coding school. It sounds like you might be, y'all might be interested.
Is it
in
a
talking to
dojo?
each other.
Something like that?
No, it's in Austin. It's called Fun to Code, I
Okay.
think, or Learn to Code. I think it's Fun to Code. So he started a
Yeah, check it
children's
out.
coding school.
Did you say you want to go from C to Swift?
Sorry?